this microphone out again, even though it disappointed me last time. So wish us luck. Happy full moon in Scorpio. Maybe we find that kind of pacing. My friends, 'tis a full moon in Scorpio. 'Tis my moon. Scorpio through and through, in whichever level of astrology or lens of astrology you peek through. So it's funny to me. That's not to say that the last week or so hasn't been interesting and heavy. Mental states are definitely interesting. Some people are diving really into their research, which is very much the deep end that we all want to be in, right? But some people are they're feeling very vulnerable and caught in that. And I feel it, and I feel you. Um, there's absolutely been days where I'm just like, what the fuck is this feeling? And then I watch the world for a little bit, and it's very clear. Um, the funny thing about it is, uh, I don't need to prove to you that companies like Space, REM Space, already made a thing like the patents that I reference in my little ebook. Um, I can. The non-believers are funny when the static picks up. And I don't mean non-believers in Christ, not at all. I mean in ghosts. I mean in spirit. The deeper things, very much a home of Scorpio, let alone in a ninth house gaze, death house gaze for some of us. In this side of the world. So happy full moon in Scorpio. Happy on holiday recovery. I feel like the day after any weird Hallmark holiday that hurts some people's hearts and rips open some wounds, maybe quite open wounds. But in all of that, happy Vesic Day, happy birth of Buddha, happy Buddhas and Bodhisattvas blessing us ceaselessly. And may that satiate, dress some of the wounds of the prior days. But so, with that, with this full moon in Scorpio, which is also hanging out with Vesta and Juno and Lilith. What a team! What a divine team! What a home turf for me, at least. Death is about greeting it fearlessly. It is very much like the Book of the Dead, written to be read like a song. It brings peace to your journey on the river as it flows. It's the paragon of peace in the body and the mind, where the waves may have crashed before. I would suggest that it is also where the kosha and the klesha inform each other. If you do not know much about yoga, I do have a class about the kosha. And I have had a class about the kosha and the klesha, but I'm breaking them up for y'all. A little easier to digest. In which both cases, in that oscillation, in the ebbs and flows, it is about returning to center, returning to source, to fractal pattern stability, to responsibility, to be clear in sight, even in the darkness, which is a very Scorpio thing. Their exoskeletons are fluorescent and they glow in a very cool, beautiful, surreal way. It is desire and inspiration and safe expansion and expression, but also may instigate the definitive difference between our superficial wants and our deeper needs. Perhaps those two things have been confused, misplaced, even, or altogether ignored. This is a good point to define your key terms. Um, Sometimes the things we think we need can also become a performance. I was actually just talking to somebody about this. Even something simple like, getting your nails done, it becomes such a habit that the actual, the care and concern that maybe went into it initially starts to fade, starts to drift away from the actual purpose of it. And so we recenter, and so we realign, so we bring all of our parts back to home. And I feel you. That's an interesting word too. As an orphan who has lived many years homeless, uh, I am grateful that I have many friends and parents to thank for their part of my journey. Uh, but it's an interesting concept, and sometimes it looks more like something than it feels like. And so we have to get clear about that. Define your key terms, define your key terms, define your truth. And when your blood boils, as it probably has been the last few days, the last week or so, when your blood boils, scream or sing. That's very much what uh, this moon and its companions would suggest. I would suggest sing. Screaming is a slippery slope. I don't think it acknowledges the patterns or satiates. I do think it can hurt just the same. Can hurt you, and you give in to a pattern ultimately, which is what I think the progression of it is such a slippery slope. And then we hurt ourselves, don't realize, like hypermobility, um, or like overstretching. Hypermobility is different. Um, the rage high, the rage high, the rage high is a slippery slope. And Mars is in Leo, and I think it is very suggestive to that. Mars and Leo can lean into this, unfortunately, and it will not be cooled by its opposition because its opposition is air. It's fanning the flames, even instigating. But in that same pattern, it is informed by Saturn and its lessons and higher road and greater good, and that is not always the easiest thing. And sometimes that hurts. Sometimes when you know you've made the right decision, you dwell on it for a minute, and it doesn't feel as good as one that might have been easier but less fulfilling, less aligned. Ooh, as rage high being a slippery slope, and I feel like very appropriate given Vesic Day and Mother's Day. Because Buddhism is such a nonviolent idea, um, to some degree. I think that all comes contextually and has been debated for a long time. Um, but also the idea of abuse in the household or disciplining your children, and the things that we've been told, the misnomers of children should be seen and not heard, and how we're healing those things. I think, and another reason why I think perhaps there's no such thing as a good or bad person, is good people can do terrible things. And when something is smaller than you, there's another word for this too. And I feel like it's just covering up some psychosis, really. But the sensation of wanting to crush something smaller than you because it's so cute. Um, or it's a power sickness. It's a high off of a power sickness to recognize or realize that you are bigger and stronger than something, and to take advantage of that. And even people that I think don't want to or intend to take advantage of that can get pushed into taking advantage, whether it be, as a defense mechanism, or in return, or what have you. Ultimately, I feel like that's happened with a lot of cult leaders. Do these people really start, um, so cruel and sadistic, or were they pushed into it by the system, by the structures, by um, rejection, I suppose. Um, and I think, that it's a slippery slope. So even, smacking your kids, uh, there will be a day you're so angry that the power feels good. So we better stay away from that edge. Let's see what else. Venus accompanies Chiron in Aries, and I feel like that's a really key point in balancing this out, because beyond just love and light, it's compassion, it's understanding, it's timelessness. In which case, you can place yourself in the villain's shoes and perhaps come to some understanding. This is not forgive and forget. This is don't drink the poison and move on. Or at least what it's suggesting. Venus accompanying Chiron in Aries is offering love and dressings to these wounds with that perspective. Should we so choose, again, to take the higher road and greater good, not as a sacrifice or a martyr, but in alignment with the kind of world that you want. I've actually had some interesting conversations with my own ideas about that, and sacrifice in some paths. And I absolutely have a high heart for blood magic, but that is because I've never needed something so much that I wasn't willing to spill my own blood. Why would I spill anything else's? It's maybe dressed in a little bit of speciesism, and maybe using the same power usurping that has been used against us in the ways in which we accept colonization in our magic or reject it, or aim to decolonize our magics. But what do I know? What do I know? I'm just very tuned. Understanding the enemy is also very much understanding yourself. And too often do I think those two things are separated distinctly. I see that a lot with AI too. It's been used to zhuzh up for compassionate sense. And people have a harder and harder time listening or hearing or seeing outside of themselves. So who is really more capable of sentience? I feel like that scale is tipping in a way that nobody's ready for, unless they're willing to entertain the possibilities. With opposition to the moon is the sun in Taurus with Mercury. Stubborn is too easy to say. It's like falling for your dream or falling for the simulation. It's the joy or high of a steadfast fool or a sheep. Will you be the black one? There's definitely an aspect of resistance, sure, but that also comes in many forms. To the uprise and the resistance, as we charter anarchy and expiry. But resistance to, still on, resistance to healing, even resistance to healing, resistance to possibility, and that goes both ways. in people, for pushing their healing modalities for sake of, inner validation or what have you, proof. Um, Wanting to prove, and something that does, a lot of times come from a good place, not always. Um, but it is a way in which we create our own resistance as well. Um, and it is frustrating when people are very resistant to fact, um, or resistant to possibility, or resistant to imagination. Um, we see people dispute facts for feeling all the time. Not to be confused with intuition. I mean more like anxiety or vertigo. Um, but that is a sensational reality, and that can be tampered with. Um, Pluto is in retrograde. Well, um, that is very much the air of nostalgia. Um, at least I've gathered. Um, but also maybe a desperation for old paradigms, a backtracking. Perhaps that can be what makes letting go of some patterns that much harder. And that's not to say walk away and never look back. That is to say separate and integrate. Uh, Understanding what exists on the other side of that cellular wall. So that's all just what I've gotten looking at it. And we'll pull some cards to see what the moon has to say before it descends upon us. If you are still here and you're not being a total fucking twat like Randy Michael here, then you're more than welcome to stay and join me for some breath. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Take a deep breath in and exhale. Last deep breath in and exhale. Ooh. Ooh. Ooh, I love that. Okay, bottom of the deck, Two of Hearts, which is a very intangible element. However, even in breathing, it did feel very much like unifying, like stepping into, like, what would it feel like if you like slipped on your skin and everything fit perfectly like a glove because your spirit matched your body. And that may be an elusive thought to some people. Um, but we all have in some way or another dealt with that. That's why people cut their hair after a breakup. They're trying to fit into this new idea of themselves, right? Um, I think that's a lot of times where ritual is necessary, where blood magic is I don't want to say necessary, but it is utilized in an extra potent way. Um, it's also slipping back into yourself after astral projecting, after dreaming, which is interesting because I feel like breathwork industry is very much, and wellness industry altogether has very much been taking off for a few years now. Um, it's very much colonized and gone through its own canceling and coming back and canceling and coming back. Um, but ultimately, I also keep noticing that the more breath work becomes popularized, and these, deep meditative trance like out of body states, um, a lot of them are not returning to grounding or concluding with some sort of grounding or re-entering into your body. If you're just like breathing out of your mouth and not transitioning into pulling your energy back in, um, then you can feel really displaced. You can feel a lot of things actually because of it. I talk about this in my little ebook. So it is kind of written as a very baseline how to do, which is so hard, uh, which is so hard for something so big and so interwoven into so many things. But also as like a like field guide to knowing it so well at baseline in your own body that these things will become very clear to you, so that even when something does feel like it's pulling you out of your body, you'll be able to return to center into knowledge and be able to ground yourself in it anyway. um, and be self-sustaining in that way, no matter what you want to explore, who you want to explore it with, which is safety in the self and safety that expands, which is success, which is a form of growth, of unity, of reflection, of correspondence, of reciprocity, of all of these things, and ultimately what is being breathed into as a form of revival. Gosh, I keep touching this thing. Is being breathed into as a form of revival. Something we can focus on. Center of this, Jack of Diamonds. That is the weight of our breath. It's the wholeness of our breath. It's the top and bottom, fullest points of any oscillating any oscillating pattern, especially informed by this two of hearts, right? So it is where we in the middle of those things, and perhaps that is maybe even just two different states of the self, and where those things intertwine. I feel like a lot of people, there's been kind of like a mass exodus of a lot of industries, and so a lot of people maybe are feeling like they don't know what they want to do next, or they've jumped around to a lot of things. And, it would feel silly if they tried something altogether new. But I promise you, this is also that these things are interwoven in some way, shape, or form. Um, there's a pulse that pulls all of these things together, that has pulled you in all of these directions. You just maybe have to look beyond the superficial. I've worked in many industries, and they are all linked very much by energy temperance and my own inner peace management, and being able to understand the outliers. Um, all things that I've learned through meditation. This is also the ways in which that our shadow side is not ostracized. It is, in fact, a, a part of your whole. It is, there's something in common, like the part of you that you don't dig like at all, or like, your red flag or whatever it is that people ask, like your toxic trait. That's what I was looking for. Um, is a piece of you that does not need to be rejected. It needs to be understood. That piece of you exists because of a wound, because of some point in your life that established itself as a mechanism, as a defense mechanism. Um, some point in our life where we cognitively or sensorily understood, this is not safe. I am not loved. I am not wanted. For whatever reason it was. Sometimes it's really small things, or seems like it's really small things, like, somebody laughing at you when you tried something new. When you climbed a tree and fell out of it. And so you were like, I'm never trying anything scary again. Somewhere in your nervous system. Um, it's it's the soft, vulnerable, loving part of you that is very much the non-shadow side of you. It just needs to be integrated. Um, I also have a theory that that's the main goal of spirit and of Christ, uh, outside of the misinterpretations of man-made Bibles. It is not about damning, but about integration. What if what if the devil and God rolled as one? Would that be the Shekinah that created them both? Perhaps. Perhaps. Um, these things are foundational. These things are very foundational, and they do help illuminate the way to whichever direction it is you want to go. It's the same thing with complementary colors. It helps build depth, dimension, and contrast. It helps develop those colors. So it ought not be swept under the rug or cast out. We talk about Bruno here. um, Seven of Spades, King of Clubs. Seven of Spades, King of Clubs. That's so funny. Um, we talk about Bruno here. I feel like the Seven of Spades is like six is very building, six is very protective. Six often elicits ideas of victory or family things that you know want to protect and fight for. Seven is destabilization of that or faith in that. I feel like that's one where maybe protective to a fault, like so protective that the doors are closed to everyone. This is very like, get off my lawn, you kids. And that King of Wands, that statement, this is a that's not necessarily the statement, but a statement. This is a man of few words. This is somebody who is so choice and selective and aware of the impact of their words, like casting spells, that they can do a lot of damage with just one sentence, or create a lot of liberation with just one sentence. And that is the grumpy, get off my lawn, or as simple as asking a stranger if they want to play, because we are all just big kids and I don't know what I'm doing adult bodies, that since the sun has come out, go to the park and just want somebody to play with. Um, and it's quite sweet and also quite heartbreaking. So we have to let our hearts swell, be broken, be fixed, be mended, grow stronger. Let it swell, let it grow. Let the hard times be a challenge of your compassion and of your inspiration. Um, Things get very hard and it plunges into our will to live. But perhaps death is just about living so fully that you have something to die for. And perhaps that's where ideas come from, uh, in, you know, at least they died doing what they loved, or those kind of aspirations. What what the blood must be like in those contexts. Oh me, oh my. Happy full moon in Scorpio. As far as things to do, be impeccable with your word. Breathe through your nose. Sing instead of scream. And if you want to know more, check out my ebook. I also have a very beginner friendly lecture slash asana, uh, somatic movement integration course, to sort of clarify these things, clarify the mind's eye, you know, still those oscillations and understand where they want to go. Jupiter and Gemini may be indecisive or overbearing, but that opposition in Sagittarius, although there's nothing in it, is very much where Eros and our arrows go, and where we're going to take that, and how clearly we're going to transmit that information like a laser, which is also this movement through. How do you connect to that side of you? Meditation can show you a lot of things. I'll tell you that. Yeah, I'll leave it there. Party on. Party on. Happy moon. Happy full moon. Be safe, be well, stay chill, stay easy. It is not going to be easy, but have faith in yourself. You don't need the drugs. And that's more of a pregnancy joke than it is about anything. Yeah, I wish y'all well. This one's a good one, but I feel often very much at home when it's seemingly very difficult around me, which is funny. So I feel you. I've been there. I got you. I got you. And until next time, chili, chili,